Okay, Joaquin, it's all yours.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. It's 6:01, today is December 11th. I'd like to welcome you all to a full room of the Salem Human Rights Commission. Thank you all for being here. Per our agenda, we're gonna go ahead and do some introductions. And typically what we do is we say our name, our relationship to the commission. I know there's some new commissioners tonight. A member usually say, Commissioner, we invite you to say the word, and we kind of go robin around the table, and then we go online. So, Jeffrey, do you want to get us started, and we can go around the room that way?
Yeah, I'm Jeffrey Evans. With a group called Barrier Free Oregon.
And a member of the commission.
Oh, yes, I'm just hanging out. I got nothing better to do.
Christina Ballard, I'm a new member of the commission, and I'm from Ward 7.
My name is Robert Dowd. I am a sergeant at the Salem Police Department, and I am the police department's liaison to the Human Rights Commission.
I'm Autumn Brettweiser. I'm just a community citizen and a teacher at the Salem College School District in my area, or I live in Ward 3.
I am Judy Collins, and I am a recent commission member as well. And I always get it backwards, and I can't see the map well enough to remember. I think I'm in Ford, Battle Creek and Kugler. So.
Likely 4. Agreed.
Yeah, sounds like the right neighborhood.
Okay.
I'm Hope Schrader. I am the youth commissioner for the Salem Human Rights Commission, and I live in Ward 1, I think.
You do.
Perfect. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Hampson, and I work for the library, and I'm here tonight to listen. I just moved to Salem 2 weeks ago, so I'm not entirely sure what word I live. I'm on police and commercial.
Welcome to Salem. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I've been here for about 5 months.
Ward 2. I'm guessing.
I'm guessing too. I'm with you. Okay, we're guessing.
Name that word.
I'm Eunice Kim. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager for the City of Salem.
My name is Robert Marshall. I am the Vice Chair of the Human Rights Commission, and I live in Ward 2. City Manager.
I'm Keith Staley. I'm the city manager.
We'll jump over here. Ilana, do you want to get us started online?
I would love to. Hi, all. I am Ilana Lynn. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a member of this commission, and I'm so excited to see the room so full of people and Zoom room, and to welcome our new commissioners. Kelsey, you want to take it away?
You bet. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns. I am a commissioner, and yeah, super stoked about this. I will pass it to Kirsty.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsty Rudich. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Ward 5, and I'm a member of the commission. And then Kira?
Hey everybody, hopefully you can hear me. I'm having technical difficulties right now, but my name is Kara Pressey. I am a member of this commission. I use she, her pronouns, and I believe I live in Ward 8. That's my guess every time anyway. I will popcorn. I think I've seen Kate on here.
Hello, I just joined. My name is Kate Strathy. I'm a commissioner. I was planning on joining the room, but then had work things come up. I will live in Ward 1, and my pronouns are she, her. Thank you. I don't know who's gone yet, so.
That's all right, Kate. Thanks for being here. Melody, I think that leaves you.
Yeah, I think it does. I'm Melody Larson. I'm here just to I guess be a viewer. I was invited to join after I applied to join the commission. So here to view it. I live in, I think, Ward 4.
Well, thank you and welcome. And I'm really happy to see so many guests tonight.
I know.
It isn't always the case, and a special thank you to our long range planner Eunice Kim and City Manager Keith Staley for being here tonight. And we have presentations from the two of them later down in the agenda. We're going to begin a little unusually. We don't usually have chair remarks, but given kind of the unusual nature of me becoming chair and just a lot of things happening, I thought I'd address a couple of things to get us started. It should only take a few minutes, but I really wanted to begin by extending my immense gratitude to both Hamadi and Kelsey for their leadership over the last year. Kelsey, especially, time and again, you've performed your duties to this commission with grace to ensure that everyone's needs were met and that the public was respected and served, and you have contributed significantly during your tenure to the institutional memory of this body so that incredible initiatives or forums like Transgender Day of Remembrance continue to be excellent events that you have helped to make happen. And we are grateful that you have chosen to continue your service on the commission. I'd like to thank you for everything, Kelsey. So hope the commission joins me in our gratitude. And I will also note as an aside, I don't usually write down my remarks, so this is uncommon for me. I also wanted to appreciate Kelsey and Robert, who accepted earlier this month the Mayor's Proclamation for International Human Rights in council chambers, and alongside Gretchen and the Organizing Committee participated in the planning of the Salem Speaks Up event, which was held last night. And I couldn't stay for the whole bit, but I was there for a few minutes, and I hope was a good event. I'd love to hear more about that later. So thank you, Robert and Kelsey. Another notable thing that happened recently was the releasing of the city attorney's findings. And so I'm going to take a moment to talk about that briefly. By way of background, for those who are new or joining us as guests tonight, last spring, at the request of mayor and council, the commission was tasked with providing language regarding the ongoing siege in Gaza. And as a result, the HRC met 3 times over 3 weeks and held about 6 hours of public discussion. During the public engagement process, the commission performed outreach to faith communities and received direct engagement from several hundred Salemites in the form of testimony, written comment, petition, and public meetings. This process resulted in a resolution which, though in a slightly altered version, was eventually adopted by City Council on May 28th of this year. On May 24th, 6 members of the public filed a complaint against the Human Rights Commission alleging 4 instances in which the commission had violated SRC or other legal provisions. Notable too that a 5th allegation was made during the course of the investigation conducted by the city attorney's office. I'd like to share tonight, though, that none of these allegations were substantiated. In my view, the most serious allegation was that the commission had permitted audience members to heckle or otherwise intimidate Jewish speakers. And I would like to, if you'll permit me, briefly share part of the ACA's report regarding this point in particular, which I think is important. The ACA report went as follows. The YouTube recordings of the 3 HRC meetings documented members of the public coughing and laughing, interrupting, snapping fingers, and making sounds during public testimony, critical of any proposed proclamation using terms like genocide, international law violations, or lacking a focus on Hamas. At no point during the recorded HRC meeting did city staff or the commission participate in this behavior. Instead, staff and commissioners repeatedly intervened to warn against the behavior, call for the respect of different opinions, and reminded participants that all viewpoints had a right to be heard. Her comments went on to say all members of the public who requested to be heard were heard by the HRC, and that the HRC extended the duration of meetings to accommodate this, and that the recorded HRC meetings contain no threats of acts of violence. So tonight I'd like to communicate, I think, 4 takeaways to the commission and the public. The first is that I'm really deeply appreciative to the many, many people who came out and lended their voice and perspective on one of the most urgent and difficult issues facing the world today. And I include here the people who filed the complaint against the HRC. It is imperative, in my view, to hold public officials and public bodies accountable for their actions, especially if they are in violation of the law. And I'm grateful for the care and time, fact-finding and expertise provided by the city attorney's office, and I found the review thorough and accurate. Second, I'd like to extend a big thank you to the members of this commission, past and present, who navigated turbulent waters during that period and performed their duties sensitively and with integrity. I'm proud of the fact that every commissioner that attended those meetings provided their unique perspective, that they centered on a concern for decency and sought to promote peace and harmony. I'm especially grateful to the leadership and staff who, throughout those weeks, were responsive, flexible, and careful to repeatedly and continuously engage members of the public, build consensus, and respond to diverse, often strongly stated concerns. Is that fair? Fair. Third, even good processes can be better. In the month since May, I believe that the commission has been honest with itself and the public regarding the ways in which that process could have been smoother and better organized. Some of us have been contributing to the process task force over the last several months, which is preparing an array of recommendations, which I believe will not only make future public processes smoother, but day-to-day operations more transparent. And I look forward to the commission receiving those recommendations in the new year. Lastly, to all of those who participated in that process, no matter where you were coming from or whether you were elated or disappointed by the council's decision, please know that this commission is an eager partner of yours. Our efforts on behalf of Salem's great diversity through our staff and public work is in service to you. Please consider this an invitation for your continued engagement in the life and governance of the city. And finally, Gretchen. 2024 marks 11 years of Gretchen Bennett serving and saving the city of Salem. And I was only recently informed that Gretchen had in October, late October, received the Mayor's Merit Award. The mayor shared in his commendation in part that, quote, when someone calls about trash piling up, they get Gretchen. When someone unhoused or facing mental health challenges walks into the office, they get Gretchen. When ADA access to sidewalks is being impeded, we send Gretchen. The Navigation Center, micro shelters, RV camping, unhoused folks under an overpass or in the park, Gretchen, Gretchen, Gretchen. Mayor Hoy called you, Gretchen, the brightest light he has known during his nearly 8 years of service with the city and a quote, embodiment of public service.
Thank you.
Those of us on the commission I know just how deserving Gretchen is of this accolade. We also know that the mayor's sentiments only scratch the surface in describing the transformative nature of Gretchen's service to our diverse and beautiful home. For my part, I will say that never in my experience anywhere in government, at any level, have I ever encountered someone so professional, so uplifting, effective, just decent. Gretchen, no matter whether it's an early morning phone call or a tense late night meeting, you make me and all those who work with you want to be better and do more for folks in Salem. So bless you, and from the commission, thank you for your service to the field. All right. With that, I thank you for indulging me. Is there any public comment, either received or from our guests in the room or online?
I have none received coming
Okay.
in.
Online? All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes as presented? Moved by Hope. Is there a second? Seconded by Celine. All in favor of the motion, please indicate their support by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, we have a couple of action and discussion items today. I'd like to begin by welcoming our city manager, Keith Staley, who I think is here to provide some updates, and I will open the floor to him.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you, Joaquin. And thank you to everybody else who's here. Joaquin, your words were beautiful and well presented and thoughtful on both subjects. And I really appreciate the way you dealt with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad I was here for that. I, of course, had the pleasure to work with Gretchen for the last 2 years and a few months, and everything you said is true.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. So why is the city manager here this evening? So let's go ahead and I've got a brief presentation that I will share with you this evening.
Where are you?
It's up there on the left, right there.
Thank you.
That's us. Drop it into presentation mode.
Exactly. Slideshow. Why didn't that work? Okay, and then from the beginning.
Yeah, there we go. So obviously, you know, you're the Human Rights Commission, and you probably are even aware that it's the 12th 12/11/24. But I'm here this evening to talk to you about the city of Salem's budget situation. I think it's important that all of our boards and commissions are aware of our budget circumstances. If we can't explain our budget and our budget challenges to our boards and commissions, we're not going to be able to explain it to our community either. So I've had the pleasure to meet with the majority of our boards and commissions now, and our neighborhood associations and our URA boards and the like. So thank you for taking these few minutes with me. I think I have 13 or 14 slides, so you're not going to get the full-blown budget presentation here. But I am going to give you an overview of where we are. This conversation is extraordinarily important. It will impact all services in the city. It will impact our ability to support this commission. It will impact the ability for us to do all of the work that you enjoy and most of our citizens enjoy. So let's go to the next slide. So I often hear, well, this is just a problem unique to the city of Salem because somehow over the last 30 years, we've mismanaged our dollars and are not good stewards of our tax dollars. And that is categorically wrong. I strongly disagree with that. We are extraordinarily frugal and efficient and effective in our spending. We take our fiduciary responsibility extraordinarily seriously. And as you can see here from the slide, we are not alone. If you are to travel to any other community in the great state of Oregon, you will discover that they are likely dealing with very similar budget constraints and challenges that we are, and having similar conversations. Just the cities within our immediate area, Independence, Monmouth, and even Marion County have had to look at ways to address their revenue shortfall or will be reducing their levels of service. We only have two levers to pull in the city. We have the more revenue lever and we have the less expense lever. And the reality is in the city, our expenses are about 85% people. So when we start talking about less expenses, we're really talking about reducing our workforce. And that of course has pretty serious implications to our ability to deliver service. So let's go to the next slide, Gretchen. Thank you. If we can
move the closed caption.
Yeah, that would be great if that's possible. Thank you. So as you can see here, this is our current budget year. We're anticipating about an $8.1 million expenditure of our fund balance this year in order to close out the year and stay within our budgeting parameters. We will start the year, we anticipate having a budget shortfall of $17.69 million or almost $18 million as we start our conversations with the budget committee and council and the community about our 2026 budget year, our next budget year. That is virtually 10% of our general fund. Our general fund anticipated revenues are 178 million and our net expenditures are 196 million. So about 10%. 10% reduction is obviously impactful, particularly when you're talking about the majority of your budget is related to humans and delivering those services. So that would mean a significant reduction in staffing. We have to maintain a balanced budget. We staff and council is obligated to approve a balanced budget. So we we don't have the benefit of the federal government where we can sort of like pretend like there's other money. We can't do that. And we also have to make our budget projections based on what we as professionals think are reasonably likely scenarios. So we can't say that, oh, the city's going to capture a unicorn and be able to sell that on the unicorn market and retrieve whatever. We can't do anything like that. We have to stay within the parameters of generally accepted governmental accounting and develop our budget from there. And we do what we call an annual 5-year forecast, where we're looking out over the next 5 years, and as you can see, out to 2030. And our budget does not improve over the course of our 5-year forecast. And as you can see here, it just continues to get worse because we have a variety of different factors built in. They are our labor contracts for things like police and fire and our library and all of the other public unions here. We know what those expenses look like over the next 2 to 3 years. They're contractually obligated, and then we make some estimates. The state of Oregon, because of measures 5 and 50, they were initiatives that were passed in the 1990s that artificially constrain or just simply constrain the rate at which or the level at which our ad valorem or property taxes can grow. It limits them to a maximum of 3% increase per year. And it sets the ad valorem assessed valuation of properties artificially lower than the market at about 60% below the market. So as new construction is coming online, all of those apartment buildings and single family homes that you see being built and the commercial structures that you see being built around the community, they're all coming online at 60% of their market value. So again, that artificially constrains the level of ad valorem taxes, property taxes that we achieve as a result of our property tax. So let's go to the next.
Mr. Staley.
Yes, sir.
Would you answer questions now, or would you prefer?
Probably best that we wait till the end. Because I very well may answer your question. But so this year, we have engaged in a long and very detailed conversation with our community through the Revenue Task Force to look at different revenue options. And they looked at the 23 different revenue options that are available to cities within the state of Oregon, and they analyzed those along with city staff and ultimately came to City Council on July 15th and made some recommendations regarding how to move forward there. Prior to that, if you were here in 2023, you would recall the payroll tax that failed rather spectacularly. It failed by 83%. That was put on the ballot specifically to address this shortfall. The shortfall, again, is not a surprise to us. This is something that we've been aware of for a decade or more. In fact, in 2018, the mayor convened a revenue task force at that time, and they recommended an operations fee, which we have in place, and a payroll tax. So the work was done back in 2018, picked up again and placed on the ballot, and of course it failed. We learned something from that. We learned very explicitly that people want to be involved in this decision making. So here we are, continuing these conversations with our community, with our boards and commissions. We also learned something as we went through the budget process last year, our 2025 budget, the budget that we're currently operating in. We proposed almost $5 million in cuts in that budget, and council saw the magnitude of those cuts, and the community saw the magnitude of those cuts and said, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. That's really painful. There were concerns about impacts to parks and recreation facilities, particularly the splash pads and movies in the park and some cultural facilities. There were concerns about impacts to the library, and parks maintenance and irrigation within parks. So council looked around and asked staff to assess what the options were. There was about $1 million in unspent ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we had put into the transient occupancy tax, the TOT fund, to offset the impacts of COVID on that fund. And council said, are those funds available? And yes, after some research, they were, and we moved them into the general fund to support library, parks and recreation, cultural facilities operations for 1 year. For 1 year, that was, $1 million out of your savings account. We don't have $2 million there. We have $1 million. We're going to pull that out, put that into the budget. So we were able to extend those limited services for another year. That will be very difficult next year. I've already talked about the Revenue Task Force, the community survey. We've conducted two community surveys this year, one in April and one in September. Both were statistically valid surveys. Neither one of them discovered a latent desire of the residents of Salem to spend more on city services. So, we're going forward understanding that, and also understanding the incredible desire that exists within our community to maintain library service, parks and recreation services, Center 50 plus, and the like. So let's see what's next here. Community survey. We actually went out to the community in September and asked them specifically about community services, parks and recreation, library, and Center 50 plus levy, and a public safety levy. Neither one of them garnered more than like 42% favorable. And both of them had about a 40%. I will not vote for this. I am opposed to this. I will certainly vote against it. So that's where we're operating from. Let's go to the next slide. So my job as the city manager is to develop an annual budget, and that's a lonely job. Ultimately, I have to make decisions based on all of the feedback from the department heads and that I hear from the community. But ultimately, I have to prepare a budget and slide it across the table to the budget committee and to city council for their consideration. So we have some principles. I have some principles that I use in preparing that budget. And of course, the first is to follow the law. We must pass the balanced budget. It is required to be adopted by prior to July 1st. The costs are recovered to required services. And obviously, it's got to continue to deliver on the general obligation bond and comply with grant obligations and requirements. Next slide. So again, this is me working with the leadership team of the city, which is the two deputy city managers and all of the department directors. And we agree that we're going to stay focused on advancing the community's vision here on the wall in our strategic plan. We're not going to initiate new services. In fact, as we go forward, frankly, as the cost of humans in our systems continues to grow, having new employees will get more and more difficult. So expanding our services becomes more and more difficult. We're not going to initiate new services. If we can't provide a service or do it well, we probably shouldn't be in that service. You know, we're going to have to make decisions about what businesses we want to be in and what businesses we don't want to be in going forward. We're going to have to make those strategic decisions. We're only going to use one-time revenues, aka the CARES Act funds to fund one-time expenses. Go to the next slide. We're going to be good stewards of our tax dollars. We'll pursue innovative approaches. We're looking at AI, for example. You know, we're looking very closely at how can artificial intelligence help us extend our employees' ability to provide services to our community. Customer service, for example, somebody calling into customer service. Well, maybe the first thing that they're going to contact with is going to be an AI, and then the AI helps serve up that conversation and identify what the resource is that they're looking for, and then they touch base with a human to be determined. But those are the sorts of things that we have to be looking at as we move forward. We need to preserve our infrastructure. We need to obviously increase our efficiency and effectiveness. We need to engage in partnerships and cost sharing, looking at things like contracting for services. We need to consider reducing services to at least align to council and community priorities. Again, as we've gone through this process, we've looked at what are the community priorities. We specifically asked them, we've asked council to weigh in on this. We've asked the budget committee to weigh in on this. So I'll be taking that information in as we make decisions about what our budget is going to look like. And then number 7, we're going to take care of our employees. We're going to continue to treat our employees fairly. We're going to continue to offer training. We're going to continue to make sure that our fire department is well equipped to respond to community concerns and issues. And we want our employees to be in a situation to do that and do it well. Next slide. So again, here we are continuing the community conversation about where we are, what's next. Council will be holding a work session on January 21st. They've directed staff, myself, and our leadership team to come back to them on January 21st at a work session to talk about a potential ballot measure that would go on the ballot for May of 2025, this next May. To date, we have talked about that being for parks, library, and Center 50 plus. So, you know, stay tuned. That is a very live and ongoing conversation. If we adopt, put a ballot out on the, or a measure out on the ballot at $1, it generates about $15 million in revenues. That certainly would be sufficient for us to support ongoing operations in the library and Parks and Recreation and Center 50 plus, and may give us enough resource to even expand services marginally, incrementally. And it also would have the ancillary benefit of taking the pressure off of the general fund, the existing general fund, to allow us to continue to fund police and fire and our general service functions at or about their current levels going forward. So next slide. And 4 clicks, Gretchen. I think there's four arrows there. So we spent some time chatting with our peers up in the city of Gresham. Last year, the city of Gresham passed a a public safety levy. They had, it's either 30 years or never had passed a levy in their history. And last year, after failing a levy in 2022, they passed a levy in 2023. And again, for public safety, to maintain and stabilize their public safety, basically pay for 30 existing police officers and firefighters, and then add another fire station and add, I think it was 8 more police officers. In order to get there, Gresham had some insights for us, and they said, you know, first off, you need to have your city council on board. If we can't get 9-0 city council, you probably shouldn't go forward with this. So, you know, that's work to be done. Have to have the city's unions and employees on board. We have to bring them along. Certainly I'm having conversations with our represented folks and the union leadership about these possibilities. Our boards and commissions, here we are, you know, having conversations with our boards and commissions about opportunities. And then finally, community organizations, and that's things like the Home Builders and Contractors Association, the Chamber of Commerce, social service agencies, neighborhood associations, and the like. All of those different components have to be aligned in order for anything to move forward. If any one of those elements are out of alignment, then, you know, it's probably not going to be successful. And given the circumstances and the time that we're in right now, a measure would be extremely challenging. But you know, so is eliminating $17.69 million from your budget. That's really challenging also. So that's the tension that we're in right now in the beginning of this conversation. And I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me here and hearing this. Let's go to the next slide, Gretchen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. So just the timeline as to where we are, we're, you know, obviously having these conversations and educating community and working to build those coalitions. In January, we're coming back to City Council and the Budget Committee to start our 2026 budget process. If Council gives us direction at the workshop on January 21st to move forward, we'll be back before the end of February to place a ballot measure by resolution on the ballot so that we can deliver that to the county to place it on the ballot for May 20th of 2025. And then we would see. Parallel to that, I will be preparing my annual budget. And like I said about the unicorns and the rainbows and not being able to bake out of the pot of gold under the rainbow, we have to go forward with the revenues that we know. And that means that we're going to have to go forward with some semblance of reductions for our general fund services, which are things like police, fire, parks and recreation, general services, and the like. So there you are. I'll probably skip over, you probably heard enough of me there, but we can go to the questions. And so what questions do you have for me? You know, what would you do? Happy to discuss this. So. Yes, sir.
Couple. Have you considered having senior staff take training in systematic development of informed consent? Because it's focused that process is focused on what you're gonna have to do, and that's sell 40% of the population on the fact that we should be increasing revenues rather than not, and for that reason. And it's a process that has worked throughout the country and now in some portions of the world. I thought about bringing up a whole bunch of things, and I would actually ask if possible for you and Ms. Kim to stay till we get to the disability committee formation, because the $17.7 million deficit is not nearly in the ballpark of what's going to be required of the city in the next 5 or 10 years, as far as people with disabilities. Because what I'm hearing is that my people are going to have to hear again, the money's not there. And we've been, we're the only marginalized group whose civil rights and human rights are subjected to a cost benefit analysis. And right now, the city has dropped the ball over the last 50 years as far as serving this group, to the point where we have sidewalks which endanger our lives. When our people go into the street to compensate, they're pulled over by SPD officers telling them to picket them for putting their wheelchairs in the streets. There's no housing. There's probably one house that's been built in the last 5 years that's accessible to people with disabilities, and that's mine. And so, this discussion later, because I'm pushing for a disability rights commission. What I'm hearing is that actually creating that is actually going to be impacted by this budget situation. And it's going to be difficult to sell the community, my community, to go along with increasing revenues if it doesn't go to improving their lives too. So.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you. As I'm someone who's fairly new to Salem and even Oregon, it was really informative and helped me learn a lot about what's going on. You mentioned AI, and I'm wondering, so the uses that you're exploring, are they pretty much with end users, or are you looking at also using it to gather data, crunch data, and make recommendations?
We're very early in our journey, as is probably the world. So hard to say what the actual use cases will be.
I would have a caution with that because of the biases that we know are baked into.
At this point, we're primarily talking about how can we use our existing data set, like our codes and our ordinances and city council actions and minutes, to develop a tool that can help staff respond to questions more fluidly. Things like that, not
automate systems and
not at this point, but I'm sure that'll come with time. But
Mr. City Manager, we have some hands raised on the line.
Yes.
Kelsey, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I don't want to go too much into the AI because y'all are like just barely like talking about it. But I think I would encourage you all to look at the environmental impact of AI. And yes, urge you to explore that. But kind of just generally, as you did talk about this, multiple states or multiple cities in the state are experiencing so much budget shortfall. Do we know of any movement in the state in altering those tax laws that have caused this issue?
So the League of Oregon Cities conducted a statewide survey and outreach process over the course of the last year. The League of Oregon Cities is an organization that represents municipalities within the state of Oregon, and they found, surprise, surprise, very little support to enhance funding for local governments. Increasing taxes for local governments, changing the measures 5 and 50 changing the kicker to affect distributions to local governments. So they weren't there wasn't, you know, a lot of support there. So the League of Oregon Cities, and I know our own city council and the city managers who I speak with on a regular basis constantly raise these concerns with their legislative delegation. And thus far, they haven't been able to find a solution to that. So.
Ilana.
So I've got a couple questions. Also, I was on the same page with Kelsey, and thinking of what the state could do. So the first question is the city bringing back the bill from the 2024 session that requested $6 million to like reimburse the city for fees, like the services used?
We're going to continue the conversation with the legislature about something related to a payment in lieu of taxes. I was the assistant city manager in the city of Olympia, Washington, also, you know, capital city. And the state Department of Enterprise Services there paid the city of Olympia $1.7 million a year, you know, 3 years ago when I left, to provide fire protection to the Capitol campus. Our Capitol campus does not pay anything for that service. We run 400 to 500 calls per year on the Capitol campus. Law enforcement provides backup and assistance to the Oregon State Patrol, and we're not reimbursed for those services in any way. So we want to continue the conversation with our legislature, and our delegation certainly understands our special and unique needs here. But what that takes is, it takes a vote of the legislature and a bill getting to the governor's office so that she can sign that bill and that we can receive some sort of payment. So we've got work to do. And this idea, this notion of some sort of payment in lieu of taxes isn't new. It's something that Salem has been interested in for a number of years and has you know, repeatedly made that inquiry, but it is our number one legislative priority. Nothing on our legislative agenda is of more importance to the city of Salem. If we can get $2 million a year, boy, that would be great. If we could get, you know, the full freight, the 6.8 or 7.3 million that the state should be paying if they were paying at the same rate that, you know, anybody else who owns property pays at, we really, that would be amazingly helpful.
So do you have a legislative concept for that? Like, is Representative Anderson going to introduce it again?
We have a lobbyist, and they are very much working this issue for us and with us.
Okay. That would be my first question. And then this isn't a question, this is a comment, but I'll follow it up with a question. Have you considered that with the supermajority, it might be easier to pass a bill this year on taxes that would be an increase for local governments? It might be worthwhile reconsidering that and talking again with the League of Oregon City or League of Cities.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. And then my question was, so you said that we have to consider pushing back services and considering cuts. What is currently on, like, in your budget that you are beginning to draft or in the discussions you've been in, what are the top 3 services that are most likely to get cut, and at what percentages? Like, is it completely gone? Is it half?
So the magnitude of a $17.69 million reduction means that everything is going to experience reductions. Police and fire make up 60% of the general fund. It's impossible for us to balance a $17.69 million reduction without impacting police and fire. But parks and libraries and Center 50 Plus and general services will all be impacted just because of the magnitude of the reduction that we're talking about here. So there isn't any, at this point, any list of prioritization. It's literally everything is on the table and everything will be impacted, given the magnitude.
Okay, and final question. You commented on how there are some services that we might not be doing efficiently and therefore should not be doing at all. Could you give an example of those, or is that just like a hypothetical?
That's a hypothetical. At some point, the police chief, for example, very recently just eliminated our downtown bicycle patrol. And he did that specifically because the demands in patrol response were such that in order to properly fill and respond to that need, he was constantly having to pull from the downtown bicycle patrol. He had, I think, 3 officers in that and a sergeant. And finally, he said, well, I just can't do this well anymore. We're not going to do that. We're going to move those officers into patrol, and we're not going to be in that business anymore. So you won't see generally police on bicycles in downtown on a regular basis next year. And that doesn't directly relate to this budget issue that we're talking about today, but that's an example of that sort of thinking.
In cutting back services, I don't want to speak for the same manager, but might look like not filling positions that are vacant, for example. I think that was a possibility.
The library last year lost 8 positions.
Yeah.
They were vacant. But as we're again looking at $17.69 million, that's not vacancies.
Right.
There are certainly vacancies in the city, but that's not just vacancies.
Kate, go ahead.
Thank you. I had the distinct honor to be on the revenue committee, and that was very interesting and fun. And I deeply understand this because of that. But before that, I didn't understand like the tax differences and how we get most of our taxes from property taxes and why that is failing. And I, from the beginning, as a communications person, thought this is really at the heart of it a PR problem, because we do need to increase taxes. There's no question about that. There's no way to solve the problem without it. So to me, it is a PR problem because people don't understand. And even in that revenue committee, somebody said, well, if you can find the money this year for the library, then I'm sure you can find it next year too. And I think on one of the local podcasts, someone said, we're not just down we're not just trimming the fat, we're down to the bones, right? Like it's pivotal for people to understand we have no choice but to find funding for the city to grow with the population. And so to me, it's still a PR problem. And even though you are all doing such a fantastic job going to committees and you have the plan that you just showed us to kind of get the word out, I think what I also learned in that revenue committee was that this is not, and you talked about this a little bit, this is not just a Salem problem, right? This is a pretty much every single city in Oregon problem. Even Hillsborough and the wealthier communities have a budget deficit. Hillsborough's is like 2 million, but it's not, they're still, I go up there all the time. You see a difference in vehicles. Even I was talking to Celine about that, but it's still frustrating to me that I think like we could maybe do a better job with like going on the news with other cities and talking about this, so that when the town, like my parents live in Donald, when the town of Donald tries to pass a levy for the fire department, it's not shot down again. When city of Salem tries to do that, it's not, it's shot down again because there's like a campaign, like a full communications PR campaign to push for this. And you may be doing that. I know the city has comms people probably working with agencies, but people get their news from so many different sources, not just the news, not just social media. I do see this being a topic of conversation with the city council more often, but I just feel like to make this successful, to make the levy successful, we really have to push harder for a PR campaign. So I don't know if you have anything like that going on. I'm happy to talk about it more, but I am nervous if this fails because I want the library to succeed. I think we've all talked about that in our community engagement meeting yesterday, 2 days ago. So this is really important to me and I think to many people in Salem, but people don't understand the problem behind it or the implications, and they don't understand the finances. They just don't get it. So we have to educate people. We have to do a big PR push. So do you have something like that happening? We can see you like traveling around and educating people, but the general public, right?
So if you open up the Statesman Journal today, you'll see, at least on the webpage, you'll see me there speaking to them about our budget situation. They wrote a very nice and accurate and neutral article about our budget situation that I think very accurately portrays it. But the city does not have a large public relations budget or capacity. Right now, our communications director position is vacant, and the PIO who stepped into that has announced that he is moving to Idaho. So we're challenged there.
There you go. Any final questions? I do want to respect, we have another guest as well. So I would encourage anyone who has more questions to email the city manager. Mr. City Manager, thank you for your time and for your work to keep the lights and the doors open. So
appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to welcome Eunice Kim, who is a long-range planner for the city of Salem, who I know a little bit from my few months on the planning commission. So we're excited to have you here. Do you have a presentation plan? Okay. Yeah, so I don't know if you want to, or if Ilana wants to. I also have to do it.
For you?
Ilana, do you want to go ahead?
I'm happy to introduce the topic. Is that what we're?
Yeah, just to get the conversation started. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so Joaquin and I both identified this issue actually, but I identified it in commercial and they identified it in residential, which was great. But I had noticed that a lot of our BIPOC and queer-owned businesses in downtown Salem were shutting down. And when I talked to them about it or talked to other community members, it was almost always because of high rent increases or uncontrollable rent. And so that made me start thinking, how can we control this? Because these are the places where a lot of minority groups are able to feel the most welcomed and safe. And so I see that as a human rights issue. And I wanted to see if there was anything the commission could do about that or start an initiative. And that being said, I also know not much about commercial rent control, as it is a very hot topic across the nation that a lot of cities are starting to consider. And so we wanted to ask some people with more knowledge and get the level set. Joaquin, did you want to say anything about residential?
Very briefly, I think that was a fair introduction. Thank you, Ilana. Was that I think something that is of interest to me is not rent control as such for the city, but I think in particular the policy thing that I've been a little bit lobbying council about has been not Keith actually, but some of the councilors has been instituting a kind of you have to inform a tenant of 6 months in advance of any rent increase to allow time for either making different housing decisions or at least being informed, which my understanding isn't permitted or isn't obligated under your law. The feedback I've gotten is that it's more of a state issue than a city issue, but it wasn't a categorical no, we can't do something about it. So that's kind of the background as I understand it. So any insights or reactions would be greatly appreciated.
And maybe I could just add,
Yeah,
so
please.
we had been connecting with Eunice and who had shared some of the feedback in our Salem planning process. And folks were interested in, can we read that feedback? And so I think that's what Eunice came tonight, is to talk a little bit about what you heard in that our Salem process.
Sure. Thank you. So I will say I'm not the rent expert there in terms of rent control. That is something that is at the state level, and they did pass something, was it like 2019? I don't remember exactly, but they did cap rent increases. But so let me take a step back. So the Our Salem project, if you're familiar with, was a big update to our comprehensive plan that we started back in 2018. And it wrapped up in 2022. That was essentially an effort to kind of better understand how the city wanted to grow, how it wanted to develop, and create the goals and policies around that. That's what the comprehensive plan is, which I have. We also did updates to our comprehensive plan map, the zoning map that you see there on the wall, our zoning code. And so it addressed issues around housing, climate, natural resources, economic development, transportation, parks, kind of all things related to growth and development. And one of the things we did hear about a lot was around housing and around displacement and around commercial displacement. So we did a lot of outreach in the community, a lot of engagement with community organizations. We did go into the pandemic, so we did go into like hybrid online mode, but community organizations and others to really kind of understand the different issues they were facing. And that's when we first started hearing about commercial displacement and just the barriers to starting a business, whether it's by people of color or otherwise. And the city has long tried to support small businesses and entrepreneurship. At the same time, we were doing Our Salem, the Urban Development Department, which is now a division, was doing an economic development strategy, trying to figure out kind of, again, how they can support businesses through COVID and in the future. So we worked, for example, with the Latino Business Alliance and David, Councilor Gonzalez, and within LASE and different communities of color, our refugee community, our Micronesian community, right? And so one of the things we did is that we heard from them was, yes, it was hard to start a business in Salem due to rents. Rents were high, particularly in areas of high visibility. So if you think about Lancaster, commercial, et cetera, downtown. And so, and there is kind of a barrier to entry, like how do you even figure out how to go about renting a space? So on the planning side, the thing that we did, and I think maybe Gretchen passed this on, is that we actually created a new use in our residential zones along major corridors that allows for live workspaces. So across the city today, we already allow home occupations, right? So if you own a home or you rent a home, you can run a very small business, essentially a service. Like you can have a tax office, or you can have a beauty salon. It's very limited on what you can do. And we've heard that there's a desire to have more affordable spaces to start your own business that's a little bigger. So people want to be able to sell things out of their home, as an example. And so working with the LBA and other community organizations, we created this live work kind of new category in our zoning code, very wonky, where essentially you can do more. You can start a business, you can take up like half of your home essentially to sell. And so that was kind of one of the things we tried to implement, responding from that concern that we heard around commercial spaces and higher visibility areas. So not in the middle of a neighborhood, but along a major corridor where we're now allow this. I will admit that we have not done a great job of promoting that. And that's something that I want to do. I was just talking to our urban development division about how we can like get the word out. I don't think people know they can even do this, so. I gotta work on that, yeah.
On that point,
Sure.
how are you planning to ensure that those businesses are compliant with Title III of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is related to public accommodations? Because if they're operating out of homes, I'll tell you right now, 99% of the homes in this city are not accessible to people with mobility impairments.
Yes, no, I appreciate that question. We work really closely with our building and safety division and the building code around making sure that we, the code that we wrote in the zoning code and the code that is required for building code align. And so if someone were to come in and say, I want to convert my house and do this live workspace, they do have to make upgrades to building code to meet ADA in particular. And so there is a very specific live work section of the building code around ADA and other requirements.
Does it say building code?
Yes.
What about with respect to the ADA standards? Because that takes precedence over the building code.
My understanding is that our building and safety enforces the ADA through the building code and their application of it when you come in to apply for different uses, like a live workspace. I can get back to you on if you have specific questions or connect you with building and safety. I'm not the expert in the building code, but we did work closely with them because that was one of the concerns.
Okay, well, the building code has historically not been ADA compliant.
Any other questions for Eunice? Ilana, any reactions to what Eunice has shared?
So Gretchen had shared a bit of that, but I loved getting more details. And I do think that like finding creative solutions is a great way to go about this problem. And I also think that if you wanted to maybe connect with the community engagement committee, we could find ways to help get that information out. Because I do think that that's, within our parameters. If you want to ask
Yeah.
the chair that actually before
We
I
have a new
volunteer.
chair, Kate,
Okay,
as of what, Monday?
yeah,
So,
okay,
it was me before, you do not have to talk to me so much.
that would be great.
How else can we help you? You mentioned outreach, but I think this is of interest to the commission. And so is there any ways that we can, other than, I guess, community engagement, any other ways that we can support?
Well, on the housing side, we are working on a housing production strategy. I don't know if I don't think I've come and talked about that. And that is essentially looking at how we can, as a city, take specific actions to meet our housing needs across all incomes, abilities, but largely focused on the housing that's not being built by the market. So we're in this process we kicked off in the spring to look at first kind of confirming our housing needs. We know a lot about our housing needs. We went back out to the community to understand them more concretely. And then working on what those barriers are. So we've been doing focus groups around that. And so the end product will be essentially a list of actions that we as a city are going to commit to taking in the next 6 years. So it's essentially like a 6-year action plan of either regulatory changes, financial incentives, how we're going to use our land, who we're going to partner with, what education, marketing, awareness, et cetera, we're going to do around housing. We're in the process right now of developing that kind of draft list of actions. We plan to have a webinar, haven't announced it yet, but it'll be January, so I'll let y'all know. To kind of go through those draft actions. We'll have a joint work session with the council and the planning commission in March and hopefully adopt in June-ish timeframe. So anything around housing and ideas around housing, displacement, et cetera, let me know, because that's another kind of project we're currently working on. And that just have to do with everything from affordable housing to accessible housing, multi-generational housing, you name it, middle housing, et cetera.
If the commission, so we're going to continue conversations on this topic. If the commission were to move forward with like a policy proposal or whatever it is that we decide to do, is that something that we should do in conjunction with you? Or would you want to have crossover with us if we decide to pursue this, I guess is my question.
Around housing or around, I guess it depends on what that policy is. And if it's not me and if it's not Gretchen, then we can obviously connect you to whoever the expert is in that.
On the commercial side, like what I want to pursue once I receive more knowledge and, could change, would be a % increase that caps the amount that the rents can be raised. I think that that's great for commercial and residential, but they'd be very different rates. But that's just in my research what I have found the best for commercial.
So I think on the commercial side, the experts really would be in the urban development division. They work on economic development. And they closely, work with like the chamber and SEDCO and other kind of LBA. They might be the best place for that. I'm not sure.
Also, recognizing that you're not a rent expert,
Yes, not a rent expert, I apologize.
Is rent policy adjudicated at the state level by law, or is it kind of by, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Any other questions for Eunice?
We need to connect afterwards.
Sure. Do you want me today? I'm happy to stay.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, refreshing kind of connect you.
Okay. Yeah.
Whichever is best.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to the both of you. It was really wonderful having you here, and I appreciate the generative engagement. So hope to be back someday soon.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Maybe with a unicorn or something.
Yeah.
Okay, Sergeant Dowd.
Yes.
By
thank
time
you.
update.
I wanted to first let the commission know that I participated today in a virtual symposium related to bias crime investigations and prosecutions and tools and strategies for successful cases. And so I found the symposium, it was about 7 hours today. It was very informative. Department of Justice, FBI, Portland Police Bureau, all talked during the symposium, provided insights of mistakes they've made, things that they found to be successful. I would say that The city of Salem, and the police department in particular, are doing a lot of things well. There's obviously room for improvement. A lot of the things that I think that we could do better, like Portland Police Bureau, they have an entire investigative division that investigates bias incidents and bias crimes. That would take personnel to do that. And as the city manager has already mentioned, personnel are at a premium right now for the city. And so those would be ways that we could be more efficient. We could have further follow-up investigations. A unit like that would have close relationships with the district attorney's offices, both Polk and Marion County, to ensure prosecution of cases, things of that nature. But I think that a lot of what we do is my presence here, communications between Gretchen and I about incidences and reports throughout the city, I think is allowing us to collaborate and to be as efficient and effective as we can be, given limited resources. So that was just my takeaway from today's symposium. To provide on the update, I apologize, I missed last month's meeting. I felt ill the day of the meeting, so I've got quite a few, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things to update. So on October 8th, we took a report in Northeast Salem of an assault, and the basis of it was the suspect assaulted a victim while shouting racial slurs. The suspect was subsequently arrested and lodged at Marion County Jail. Again, that was back on October 8th. On October 22nd in Southeast Salem, community member reported concerns about racial slurs displayed on a mirror in the front yard and a Confederate flag hanging in the front yard of a house. This was a bias incident, as the racial slurs and the flag are protected by First Amendment. And so officers did go out, they found the reported materials, connected with the property owner who said that it was a tenant that was displaying these materials, and the property owner had intended to address the concerns and the issues with the tenant, but ultimately it was not a criminal incident that the police could take action on. On 11/6 in Southeast Salem, there was a menacing incident that occurred. Somebody who had previously been trespassed from a business showed up at the business with a knife and was making derogatory comments on the basis of race toward an employee. That person was subsequently the suspect in that was found and ultimately arrested and lodged at Marion County Jail for that incident. On 12/1 in Northeast Salem, there was an incident of disorderly conduct. This was a bias incident related to race. Says here, officers responded to a report of a disturbance involving a male previously trespassed from a business. The male was observed attempting to damage property while shouting racial slurs, causing alarm, but no physical harm or damage occurred. No individuals from protected classes were identified as victims, and no bias-motivated crimes were committed. However, the use of racial slurs was documented as a bias incident. The male was arrested for trespassing and disorderly conduct. So we didn't have the bias crime to charge, but there were other incident or crimes that the person was charged with. On 12/3 in Northeast Salem, officers responded to a report of a male who had walked into a residence without permission and had fallen asleep on the couch. It was not until officers arrived and detained the male that the male began shouting racial slurs towards the officers, not towards the homeowners at all. The person was arrested for trespass. And then on 12/6 in Northeast Salem, there was a report of graffiti on a park bench where racial slurs were written on the bench. The report was taken and the information was passed along to the Parks Department to cover the graffiti on the bench. And then Gretchen had forwarded me one of a report of a swastika on the fence. And I haven't gotten a police report from that one yet, but we have forwarded it on. Gretchen's forwarded it on also. for removal.
Thanks to Commissioner Strathby, that was from Kate.
Ah,
Thank you. Yeah.
you bet. So that's what I have that gets us up to current.
Thank you for that report,
You bet.
Sergeant. For guests and new commissioners, just, you know, obscene or biased imagery and graffiti and defacement is very common. It's one of the most common thing that we encounter, especially around schools. So yeah, as your service on the commission continues, we hear a lot of that. Violence and arrests are quite uncommon.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those in that report. So any questions about any of those? Was it 6 incidences?
6 since October 8th.
Any questions? I have one, but I'll wait for others to ask theirs first. Yes, I won't. So one of the situations was a tenant when they had a property owner and there's a tenant. What prerogative does a property owner have in removing language like that or imagery like that themselves without violating the First Amendment rights of a tenant?
Ooh, you're getting into landlord tenant stuff, and the Salem Police Department doesn't deal with landlord tenant because it's civil. But I would tell you that my advice to the property owner would be that they could take whatever recourse they wanted to not renew that lease with that tenant, but that they couldn't go and remove, you know, like for instance, in this one, there was a Confederate flag that was hung outside of the property. They couldn't, the landlord would not be within their legal right to remove that. Even though they own the property, they're in essence relinquishing ownership right to the tenant while the tenant is there. So we've had issues in the past, like as an example that I think is relatable, apartment complex wants to have a trespass letter of consent for their entire apartment complex. Trespass letter of consent basically says nobody's allowed to be on the property after hours, regardless of the reason. Well, if I own an apartment or if I'm renting an apartment at that complex, I have the right to have guests over at any time I choose, right? And so we would go back to the apartment complex property management and say, we as a police department cannot enforce your trespass letter of consent because people have the right to have people come and go from their apartment. So I think that's somewhat related.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for your report.
You bet.
All right, Gretchen, you're next.
Yes.
Complaints of discrimination.
Yes, sir. I received one in the month of November that related to community members calling in concern. They witnessed something at a place of public accommodation where they felt that a security personnel used excessive force or reaction against a person of color who was at the location. I'm not completely through my conversations with folks yet, but I was able to learn that the police had also been contacted and did a follow-up investigation and would have had probable cause to arrest the person that the security guard had interacted with for theft. And so we're still in kind of some discussions with the caller and the place of public accommodation. So that was the situation I am assisting with.
Any questions? We have a litany of things to get through tonight, still on the balance of the agenda, and there's 40 minutes remaining, so I'm gonna, at the risk of being a little rude, I'm gonna kind of try to go briskly through these if you don't mind. The first is regarding citizenship sanctuary and chapter 97 changes. For those that are guests or new, I will ever so briefly provide background, which is that every year we conduct a community belonging survey that helps inform. We get a lot of robust responses from that, and it helps inform not only our work throughout the year, but recommendations we make to council. And some of our recommendations are quite substantive and do get adopted by council. And so, as part of that, last year, or was it last year? A year and a half ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise. We heard it from our indigenous Latin American community, folks who were undocumented or have variable status, feeling a barrier of accessing resources like police reporting crimes that happen to them, otherwise having resources accessible to them. And so part of the priorities of the commission was trying to identify those ways in which we could mitigate that or help make those sorts of resources more accessible. As we have done our learning and understanding, it looks like we probably won't be making a statutory recommendation to council for SRC, but trying to find ways to help facilitate that conversation. And I think we arrived at an idea of a public forum where we're engaging stakeholders and bringing folks in the conversation. And so by way of background, there you have it. I have a pitch for people we would like to add to the list of partners for that yet to be determined conversation. One of them, or two of them, well, there are two of them. The first is the Oregon for All Coalition, which for those who are maybe not familiar or new to Oregon, there was a long time in the early 2000s where organizers were trying to get licenses for folks who were undocumented. Just being pulled over and not having a license often meant getting into someone's back and they experienced deportation. And that struggled politically for a long, long time. It actually was not adopted until 2019. And went into effect 2021. It's still in state law. And this coalition, the Oregon for All Coalition, was formed as part of that. It's continued advocacy work around immigrant rights and kind of builds these. It's another convener of conversations and organizations. So that might be an entity to reach out to. The second would be what did I write? Oregon Worker Relief, which is an organization that is also at the center of immigrant rights here in Oregon going into the next year with the change in administration. So if either one of those entities is interested, I think it'd be wonderful additions to that conversation. So.
Copy. And if I may, I want to appreciate Kate. Kate reached out to me to offer to help make some initial outreaches to the list that you all developed at the last meeting. And so I'll be following up with you, Kate, and we'll work together on that. Thank you for your help.
Are there any other updates from anyone on this topic in particular? All right, well, there'll be more to come. Next is the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People. Also quickly by way of background, this is an event that I'd like to bring to Salem that I used to organize in another life. That is an annual event that's held on Valentine's Day on February 14th, your birthday. That came out of Vancouver, BC some years ago. Not that long ago, like 20 years ago. And it is meant to bring attention to, by way of visual, the many missing and murdered Indigenous women that there are in North America. And this is an epidemic in the United States and Canada and Mexico and parts of Latin America. And I envision this being something like what we do for Trans Day of Remembrance in November. Not likely for this coming February, but trying to lay the groundwork, trying to do outreach to local tribes and other community stakeholders. What we might be hoping to get is maybe a proclamation from council in February. And so I don't really have any substantive updates regarding this in terms of activities in the last month, though we are going to try to find those memorandums from the tribes to see what is involved in that kind of outreach. So any questions or comments from that? Please.
I have one thing. So today I saw that there was a new documentary that was at Sundance, I think this year, called Sugarcane, and it's about investigating residential schools in Canada and doing like an actual, I think, police investigation of them and how that's going. And it's a heavy film, but they are still doing screenings. So they did reservation tours, I think, around Canada and the US for this film. But you can request to host a screening. And I asked them what that takes. So I'm not saying we have to do it this year, but I asked what that takes because it might be something that we could do by February to have like a screening of a film. And then maybe even have some of our local Indigenous leaders speak about what that, like what residential schools were like for either them personally or, because it wasn't that long ago, them or their family members who attended residential schools. And then we could do like a vigil afterwards and somewhere like Shemeketa, which is on native land, or I mean, we're all on native land, but Shemeketa or like Willamette or one of those locations, if we could hold a screening, I think it'd be awesome. So not moving ahead without anybody's permission, but I just wanted to see if it was even possible, if they're still holding screenings, if that was something that we could do. So I will let you know if they get back to me. And if not, then we just don't do it. But if they say yes, we can host a screening, because now I think it's owned by Disney, so probably not. But if they say yes, then I can let Gretchen know, and maybe we can work something like offline between our next meeting. See if there's any option to do just even a screening would be kind of cool. So
If I may,
Please.
Joaquin, Celine also reached out about a documentary.
Yeah, it's called Missing from Fire Drill Road. It was filmed in Washington by this documentary filmmaker, and it focuses on a missing Indigenous woman, obviously in Washington. And it premiered earlier this year. So it's on like Amazon Prime, everywhere except it seems like maybe Netflix. I haven't checked Netflix yet myself. So it's just getting that screened and seeing what that's about.
Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna mention with both, I think an important next step would be watching the document in its entirety to just hear how it aligns with the policies and values, that we're working with, make sure there's nothing funny and go from there.
Thank you both for those suggestions. I think a natural partner, actually for both, would be the Chemawa Indian School. See what input or reactions they may have to maybe help us do that together. Well, I appreciate those updates and your continued engagement on that topic, and hopefully we'll have some more updates in the new year. All right. The next is regarding the potential formation of the Disability Committee. Before I give you the microphone, Jeffrey, I'm going to say three things. One is the commission should have received yesterday or this morning. I can't remember, Gretchen, when you emailed us.
This morning.
Thank you. A draft prepared by.
Need a copy.
Huh? I have one here. I was just taking too long. Of what it's framed as a Disability Rights Commission, but what a Disability Rights Committee might look like. So thank you, Jeffrey, for that. So that's my comment one. Two, as chair, I'll just say that I'm very supportive of creating this committee. I think, and I anticipate that it likely will be created. I will say, though, that I am sensitive to Gretchen's capacity, and though she has very generously said she's willing to staff it, and I know she is, I would like this to, if it is to be made a committee, to happen after we've sunset some of our transient committees that are being staffed right now, and at least, well, the Salem Speaks Up is done, and then the task force will be done in the new year. So my second comment. My third comment is that I'd like to limit our discussion of this to about 10 minutes, because we do have 7 other agenda items to get to before the end of the hour. So with that being said, Jeffrey.
Let me just lead into this discussion, because the city needs a Disability Rights Commission. And the reason why I'm focused more there than putting it under this commission is because the scope of the things that it would have to deal with would overwhelm this commission. We're dealing with topics that affect 28.7% of our population. That's according to the CDC. And 11%, according to the Social Security Administrative or Statistical Abstract, 11% of people in Oregon have mobility impairments that require accessible housing. Maybe a little bit of the background. In 1977, Section 504 regulations to the National Rehabilitation Act, excuse me, essentially said that any program funded by the federal government had to comply with the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards. That would apply to roads in the city of Salem. In 1990, the ADA was passed, and Title II deals specifically with governmental entities, and it said governmental entities cannot discriminate. And it's set for 1995, where each governmental entity had to review all standards, practices, code requirements, regulations, et cetera, to determine the extent to which they complied with the provisions of the ADA, and to determine a plan to transition to better access. In late 1990s, a suit was filed in the city of Sacramento against the city of Sacramento because the city was making some roadway improvements, but not making sidewalks and curb cuts accessible. That eventually got to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that ruled that anything the government does, normal function of government, had to comply. Everything government does has to comply. That was appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it. So effectively, until there's a competing case, that's law nationwide. And the reason why I kind of wanted Eunice to stick around a little bit is because the comprehensive plan is emblematic of the problem in the city of Salem. In that 117-page document, I found 16 references to disability, disabled, accessible, accessibility, only about 8 of which really discuss the topic. And it really does not deal with housing. We are building single-family homes in this city, left and right, that are inaccessible to people with disabilities. And in the position the city attorney and the planning department has taken is, well, all we have to make sure is that apartments are accessible, or we can't dictate to people who buy houses the accessibility. I live down on D Street near the Jory Apartments. If I had bought one of those houses when it was complete, $500,000 house, I would have to put another $100,000 at least into making it accessible. That's what we call a crib tax, because it's going to cost us $100,000 more to live in that neighborhood. The other option is to buy in some of the older areas where the housing is less expensive. Essentially, what that means, I'm just going to pull numbers out. $300,000 house. You'd have to put $150,000 into it to make it accessible. But because that costs 50% of the original cost of the building, that would then trigger building code people to say, you have to bring it up current with all current codes. And if it was before in 2004, that meant seismic upgrades as well as electrical, et cetera. So you're looking at probably a $600,000 house in a $300,000 neighborhood. That's an investment that would never return that investment. Never, you just wouldn't get the money out of it. And so that's economic discrimination. That's essentially redlining. I've given you 2 examples of redlining that have both been outlawed by the Fair Housing Act amendments. This document doesn't deal with parking, and that's one of the things I wanted to raise here. There was a survey sent around on this city newsletter on parking. Not one question had to do with accessible parking. And I can tell you right now that there's no disabled parking downtown that complies with the ADA. And I've got photos I can show people. But we're talking about, you wanna show
Sure,
those?
while you're looking, if you want, I can.
So there's nothing about, well, all the neighborhood documents, the neighborhood plans which are used as to guide the planning department. Most of them would have not been upgraded or revised since the 1980s. And since the 1980s, we've had Fair Housing Act amendments come into play. We've had ADA come into play. We've had the Barton decision that I just discussed come into play. And none of these plans really incorporate those decisions. This one's outside Rudy. Can you see the slope of the car? Well, when you have a ramp, that forces it not to work properly because of the slope. Because what happens is when the door closes, it runs a roller along the ramp to know that it's closed. Well, when you're at that kind of a grade, the ramp doesn't close completely. So the door just immediately reopens. Now, if you're someone like me with my 9 times surgically repaired elbow, I then have to force that closed. But our public works department would maintain that, well, it complies with the requirements of the AASHTO requirements, which it does. The ADA says it has to work, no matter what the requirements are. If you have to exceed it to make it work, you have to do that. It's not doing. So that parking isn't covered. The dimensions where there are policies are all permissive language, encourage this. Well, Gene, Mr. Developer, we encourage you to build these houses with universal design principles. The developer says, go hang it off your ear. Oh, we encourage them. That doesn't solve the problem. We have other language like, well, we should do this, we should do that. No, you're required to do it. And it's nowhere in this document. The development code is, and so in my opinion, this is a waste of money. And this is the single biggest human rights violation in this city because it discriminates against 28.7% of the population. A figure that's growing as people get older. And there's some discussion of, aging in place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's all fine and well, but it's nothing that describes that. This city, in its authority to approve subdivision maps, can condition those maps as saying these houses will not have steps leading into them. The doors will be a minimum 36 inches wide. The position of the planning department is, no, we can't do that. So essentially what we're saying is that our approval of subdivisions, even though it results in a discriminatory situation, it's okay because we're not discriminating. That's not the case. Under constitutional law, there's direct discrimination where you say, hey, you're a crip, I'm not selling my house to you. The other is when you create a situation where that person can't live in the neighborhood. That's called effective discrimination. And all of the city plans, all of the city codes are all focused on discriminating hands off. We don't have anything to do with it. And that's what this document reflects. And that's the attitude that has been reflected recently. A group of us met with city attorney, planning director, building official, and Gretchen. And the response to that was, well, the Barton decision doesn't apply because there's discussion on what government does. The Barton decision said anything the government does. It actually calls out zoning. It says zoning is something the government does that has to comply with the ADA. This plan, you wouldn't see it in this plan. 117 pages, and there are 8 mentions of disabled and disability. And we are the group most affected. Our civil rights, our human rights are most affected by the built environment. If you're gay, if you're Black, if you're a woman, you can walk in a building. We can't if there's stairs. And what I like to point out is that I'd like to ask the question that would you advocate allowing a sign in front of a building that said colored entrance in the rear? I think everyone here would say no. But that's exactly what we're doing for people with disabilities when we put steps in front of a house. I can't visit any of my neighbors because I can't get into the house. I can't work as a real estate broker or a real estate appraiser or do door-to-door sales because I can't get in the house. Campaigning for public office. Can't get to the door, can't knock on it, you can't get the attention of the voter. So we're talking about social, political, and economic disenfranchisement. We need a disability rights commission. One, because like I said, it'll really, this commission could not act effectively. The other problem is that, and this should have been happening all along, but the department heads and senior supervisors should be getting trained on what they're required to do under the Americans with Disabilities. The problem with that is we could put these people through 10 years of training and they would not have 1/10 of the information that could be resident on the Disability Rights Commission, people representing those groups. Even I can't do that. I mean, I can say, yeah, you know, you got a problem here because the visually impaired can't read this document, which is a series of images as opposed to something that can be read. I can't tell you what the best way to deal with that is because I don't live it. I have enough knowledge to say, hey, that's possibly a problem. When you're talking about amputees and talking about wheelchairs, yeah, I'm your guy. Same thing with your group. Yes. So the mental health community, I can't respond to that. I mean, although some people consider me a little over the top sometimes, I really can't, I don't live that. And if you don't live it and you're trying to enact policy, you cannot understand unless you did work with people who do live it. Same thing for the visually impaired, same thing for the hearing impaired, same thing for people with hidden disabilities. And so that's why I would like this commission to go on record with a recommendation to the city council saying we need a disability rights commission. Because, and I asked Mr. Saley to stay to hear this, but not doing so places this city at the precipice of financial ruin. The case that I told you about, Barden v. City of Sacramento, the one city, it ended up costing the city $100 million because they had just passed an additional 1% sales tax. The settlement, 80% of that had to go to just fixing sidewalks and curb cuts.
Joaquin, it's been 15 minutes and respectfully, I think discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Evans. I appreciate you've spoken very movingly and articulately to the urgent needs that many folks with disabilities in Salem are experiencing. I think no one would deny the need to meet that need with action, and I hope that we can be a part of that in some capacity. I'm going to take maybe two hands at most, because we still have, as I said, several things to get to. So please go ahead.
Along this matter.
Yeah.
Raised.
Go ahead.
Are the city documents not compliant with the universal design
No,
electronically?
no, the most successful house that's been built in the last 5 years is mine.
No, the document.
Oh, the documents. Well, the old neighborhood plans are all image files.
And documents the city produces now, are they
We,
accessible?
I can
Yeah.
say that we certainly aim to, and then we wanna hear when someone can't read it with screen readers or, you know, the different things, and, Jeffrey helped us find some documents that were not readable, and we worked on making them readable. It's certainly our intention, but there may be things out there that we need to fix.
Okay.
Generally speaking, it's certainly the policy too, whether we get it done, you know, there's
Yeah,
a
but-
vast number of documents.
Go ahead, Ilana.
So I appreciate your passion on this topic. And, you know, as a disabled, chronically ill person who did spend a fair amount of my youth in a wheelchair, I also find these topics very close to heart. But I also recognize the immense fiscal impact that Updated Everything will be, because it has been a historically forgotten community. And with that recognition, I think that our commission certainly has a role to play in this, in the like specific issues such as identifying inaccessible papers and, you know, other ways that we can assist. And I also think that there's other boards such as like the Downtown Advisory Board that could handle the park-in issues. And there's other commissions that can take, I think that this is an issue that needs to be broken up into existing systems in our current financial state. And I also think that the disability issues are something that is a human rights issue, and therefore something that we should work on. And I think that that's something that should be added to our work plan, in the way that we have added other topics, such as the houselessness town hall and other things that we have done as initiatives, and like the sanctuary city. So as far as you can come to us with ideas on that, I think that that's where this commission would have the most interplay. And, you know, I'm speaking from my own opinion of what I see, but I'm open to other opinions from commissioners as well.
Thank you, Ilana. I'm gonna table any response and further conversation, recognizing this is not something that we're going to solve tonight. So I look forward to the continued engagement next meeting on this issue, and I hope folks do get the time to get to this document so that we can talk about the recommendation in details. I think it deserves that level of attention. Alrighty, let's go into committee and project updates. And the first person is me. I'll be very brief. We had Professor Marianne Bradshaw join us at the Community Engagement Committee. Someone helped me yesterday, Monday. And we had a productive conversation around what this next year's survey is going to look like. Harkening back, you know, to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, we had this annual community line survey, and so it's going to look a little bit different. The first year I chaired that committee, we totally rehauled it. It's not going to be like that, but we're going to take at least 3 or 4 questions out and probably put some more in that get at the belonging component as opposed to the discrimination component alone. So hopefully more updates to come there. And that sort of goes out in the spring around May time for those that are interested. And there are other updates, but the last I think I'll just give is that we have a new chair for that committee, and you'll hear from me less, which is always a good thing. So congratulations, Kate, and I look forward to your leadership on that committee.
Joaquin, one thing I would just add is we have new commissioners, so you're welcome to join the committees. There are multiple, but please join us.
You beat me to it. I was going to do that in the remarks at the end, but I appreciate that. Thank you. They're open to commissioners and members of the public. You do not have to be a member of the commission to join a committee. It's a great way to get involved. Kira, your update, please.
Okay, can you, yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm still having some technical difficulties. So I think I'll just shorten up kind of what I was gonna say, but basically a huge thank you to our readers and everyone who participated in the Trans Day of Remembrance. That was last month, and I think we all count it as a very successful event. So thank you again to everyone. And then the community, the committee discussed what our focus is going to be moving forward. And it looks like through the next month, we're going to be focusing on recruitment. So I'll just reiterate what Kate said. You can join the committees. And then secondly, we are also going to be focusing on putting on a healthcare community forum for members of the LGBTQIA community and healthcare leaders. We would like to provide the opportunity for healthcare leaders to briefly discuss their organization and services and ways in which they are catering to the needs of the LGBTQIA community. So look for that in the near future. But as far as anything else, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Thank you, Kara. Ilana.
So the process task force has been working diligently for 2-3 months, somewhere around that, to draft a policy and procedures document for this commission to help align just a standard of practice for what we do and help future commissioners and us when we plan events. And we have finally finished drafting that. So big thank you to everyone who chipped in and has been meeting to finalize all of these. And now it is on Gretchen to format them because she is just a shining star. And soon we will be able to present those to you all and vote on them and discuss any changes if there are any. And that should be sunsetting pretty soon. And then I also just wanted to give some praise to Kira for the Transgender Day of Remembrance. It was a really awesome event, and she gave us praise, but she deserves so much as well. So thank you, Kira.
I believe Gretchen is the brightest light, not just only a star, but a brightest. And you know what, Kira, I owe you a huge apology because I had made a note to myself to include Transgender Day of Remembrance in my chair remarks, and I didn't. And I'm so sorry. It was a wonderful event.
Oh no, it's okay.
And thank you everyone who made that a wonderful event. It's an annual event that we have every year on November 20th. So thank you. It was meaningful and beautiful for the community.
It was a really great team effort. So thank you guys.
Kelsey.
I will be quick. So Salem Speaks Up was yesterday. Thank you to everyone who attended, Joaquin and Kate for coming, Robert for being the MC, Gretchen for really just doing a lot of heavy lifting. Oh, Celine came. I think I got everyone who came. Thank you so much for coming. I got some good input on the events, and people really appreciated learning about resources that the city that are within the city. And we got some more feedback, kind of like they wanted it to be similar to the homelessness town hall. So that was really like good feedback for us to have that town hall, if it was put on again, would be beneficial again. And yeah, we have hint, hint, Robert, come on. And then we have our last planning meeting, kind of just to wrap things up, coming up, and that's it.
Thank you, and thank you again, Kelsey and Robert and Gretchen, for all the effort you put into making it event wonderful. Equity asks and staff update.
Couple quick things. One, speaking of the event last night, I found our communications sign-up document buried in the complaint forms last night. So I wanted to apologize to those of you who may have noticed our sign-up sheet wasn't visible on our table. It was mixed in with other papers and I missed that and wanted to apologize. Number two, welcome to all of our new faces again, and I'll be reaching out to schedule orientation to help with that. And then you should have gotten an invitation from me today regarding a social event on Monday to appreciate our outgoing electeds. So all are welcome.
In the library.
Yes, it's at the library and right across Peace Plaza in Anderson A&E.
With no disabled.
I want to ask you more about the parking up here on the east side of the building. Cause that's where we have parking for people with disabilities, so,
In the ring, right?
yeah. it's
Okay, I'm gonna stop
Copy.
this. Hope, please.
Yes, you already just mentioned the.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're so good. I was not able to send out calendar per usual this month. My computer's like, we're having a whole technical thing, but we're good. So that one I wasn't able to send out and I apologize. Beyond, the mayor and city council farewell, the West Salem Peace Walk is on Thursday per usual. So that's December 19th at 7 p.m. and it's just across from Annette's. I know we have a lot of different peace walks. My parents organized the one in West Salem, so that's how I know about it, but that's all I have. Yeah.
How well have they been going?
Good.
I mean, how popular?
Last one, we had 5 people in addition to my parents and I. And then last time we had like 20 people. It was just great. It was
That's wonderful.
amazing. It was so great. Yeah, it's wonderful.
At a later date, for those who are new to Salem, we'll talk about where those came from and then a good conversation. All right, I'm gonna open up to any member remarks or announcements about anything that has not been discussed on the agenda so far. Any member remark, please? Oh, wow, okay, we'll start with you, Kate, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna put Celine on the spot because Highland has a bunch of stuff coming up in Neighborhood Association at Center 50+ this Saturday and Peace Walk, right? So I'm putting Celine on the spot because Grant and Highland are pretty close, so.
Highland has a peace walk coming up in January on the 25th, so I'll mention it next month too. And then, like Kate said, Center 50+ has an event coming up. From, I think it's 10 to 1.
11 to.
Okay,
1?
yeah.
Yeah, it's like gift wrapping and holiday stuff,
Go
and
early.
fun and volunteering.
Yeah. Basically, they're like wrapping gifts for shut-ins, so people that are seniors that don't get out. And there'll also be cookies and cookie decorating.
Interesting. What was the time again?
Like 11 to 1. It's at the Center 50+.
There's a flyer on in the entry for those.
You know, there were cookies last night and not Soul ate them.
That's not true. I ate one.
Really? Well, then I left too early.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah, they were for after the
but
event.
they were all closed and I didn't want to open them.
Oh, yeah,
So
no.
you're the cookie mother.
Oh, wow, if you say so. There was Ilana and then Kira.
So just something that I found out today that I wanted to flag, because it might be a future discussion. Here, Oregon has decided. Is anyone else?
There's an echo.
I'm getting a weird echo.
I don't know why.
We'll try
It
to
might
hear
be you,
anyway.
Kira. Do you mind muting Kira? Okay, go ahead, Ilana.
Okay, yep, I think that was it. Sorry. So Care Oregon, which is the coordinated care organization for not our area, but they released a memo to behavioral health therapists that they will no longer be reimbursing visits for their therapists and counselors on supervision, which are technically unlicensed, which is a majority of the low income community and marginalized community see these providers. And so it's something that I'm very concerned our CCO is going to also try to implement. So I just want us to be extra cautious about anything we hear moving forward about CCOs and behavioral health therapists. So just a flag to be on our radar. Thank you.
Thank you. Kira?
I was just going to ask if someone would repeat the day of the Center 50 event. I'm so sorry.
With the cookies.
Yeah,
Cookies
it's
are
on
important.
Saturday, so in a few days.
Okay,
So that's the
thank you.
14th. 14th. You said from 10 to 1?
11 to 1.
11 to 1.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What was the time of the peace?
The peace walk's gonna be 4:30 on the 25th of January, so not December 25th. I just wanna make that clear. January.
Thank you all. Please, go ahead.
I'll make mine brief. Gretchen, I believe, sent out in the email some information about the homelessness point in time count.
Yes.
I urge anybody that's able to get involved in that event. It's a really great way of meeting unsheltered individuals where they are, both in the community as well as some stationary events. Feel free to reach out to both Gretchen and myself. We're working together on coordinating the Salem area metro count, but it's just a really impactful opportunity. And it's kind of just a great, like way to tee up the discrimination survey that we will be doing as well. I also just want to share that the events that we're holding, I think, is getting the word out about the Human Rights Commission. I had a colleague of mine say that she was like, I didn't even think I didn't know the Human Rights Commission or they did any of this. And historically we didn't, but people are learning more about the Human Rights Commission the more we're doing these events. And so it's really great that we're seeing some new faces that are eager about this work as well, so we can help lighten the load. But I think the more we get to these events, people will know about the Human Rights Commission, they'll be able to get educated about the services and everything we're able to provide. And I'm really excited about the 2025 calendar year.
And thanks for being a part of that. Any last comments here in the room? I'll conclude by thanking you all. I know this was kind of a sprint of a meeting, which is unusual. So thank you for hanging in there with me. And to the new commissioners, again, I want to echo Gretchen's welcome, and please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the commission. You've joined a wonderful body of people Christina already is ahead of the curve. She emailed me, who are really passionate about making Salem a fairer, more welcoming place. So welcome, and I'd love to get to know all of you individually and work with you in the year ahead. So with that, it is 8:02 and I bring this meeting to a close. So thank you all.
Do you want Kira, Kate, and Alana to stay on for the leadership
Yes,
meeting?
but yep, people know that. Thank you.
Well, they typically jump off.
Oh, the chairs stay, which is new for you, Kate, I guess. That's true. Thank you, Robert. That's true.
You need to be in this meeting.